Thank you very much, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's meeting of the Cabinet. During the live broadcast, members and officers are asked please to ensure that mobile phones are placed in silent mode and that microphones are switched off whilst not in use. A special welcome today also to Councillors Miss Candlin and Walwork, our new Cabinet members for the current municipal year. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Member Services, would you please report apologies for absence?
Thank you. We've had apologies from Councillor Tierney.
Thank you. Agenda item 2 are the previous minutes of the meeting which took place on the 16th of March 2023, and we're being asked to approve the public minutes at pages 3 to 8 of the public agenda pack as being a correct record of that meeting. May I ask any member who does not agree with the minutes to indicate that now? I see no objections to the proposal to approve the minutes as a correct record of the meeting, so they are now agreed. Thank you. Right, agenda item 3, there are no urgent items for consideration today. Agenda item 4 is interests. This is to receive any declarations of interest under the local code of conduct or any interest under the code of conduct on planning matters in respect of any items to be discussed at this meeting. If you have anything to declare, please can you inform the meeting now? No hands are raised, thank you. If anything occurs to any member during the meeting that they have an interest to declare, please do declare that with no delay whatsoever. Thank you. Agenda item 5 is the Rural England Shared Prosperity Fund, which is on pages 9 to 14 of your agenda pack. I'll be proposing this, and in fact, I'll give my proposal now, and I'll be seeking a seconder after doing so. This is a fund which has been set up by the government, which is really built on the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, which we've already dealt with in the past. The total amount of money which has been allocated to FDC via the CPCA is £436,000, £109,000 which is for the current financial year, and £327,000 is for 2024-25. The Rural England Shared Prosperity Fund is designed to achieve two main areas of objectives. The first is in the area of business, and the second in the area of communities. Because of the lateness of the detail of this announcement from government, it really will be quite difficult for us to spend the money in the current financial year on communities matters. And that's why the proposal which is being made today is to spend the I'll get the right number, 109,000, thank you, £109,000 this year on businesses. And then for next year, we'll have an appropriate division between businesses and communities so that we get an overall fair distribution between businesses and communities. Because on communities, it takes quite a bit to work up projects and then get them from being worked up to actually being put into place. And for us to achieve that by the 31st of March 2024 would be ambitious. So on the business side, we have much more information. We've got many more schemes which can be utilised. And it therefore makes a lot more sense this year where we are short of time for the £109,000 to go in the direction of businesses. Now, the government produced a prospectus for the Rural England Shared Prosperity Fund, and it set out for the two sectors the types of expenditure which would be accepted, and that's listed on pages 11 and 12 of your agenda pack. But from that, the recommendations that I'm putting forward in this report are that in this year, at least, we should prioritise grants towards equipment and premises for smaller businesses, which will promote business growth, grants to rural areas, and grants which will create and sustain rural jobs by assisting the diversification of income streams from farmers. So today's resolution, first of all, the recommendation is that we accept the £436,000. I hope that we'll all agree that we will happily accept £436,000. that we will just allocate the first year's money to business growth purposes because of the tight timescale, that we will prioritize those 3 areas that I've just mentioned, that we will delegate to officers the responsibility for approving and finalizing with the CPCA the grant funding agreement, and that we will note that a further report will be presented to a Cabinet for approval of the detailed proposals in relation to the project's procedures and documentation associated with the onward administration of this funding. So that's what I'm proposing. May I have a seconder, please? Councillor Mrs. Laws, thank you very much indeed. Anyone care to speak on this matter? I see no one willing to or wanting to speak, so I'll move on to the recommendations which I've just read out. Are the recommendations agreed? Please raise your hands. That's agreed unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. Move on to agenda item 6, Fenland Future Limited appointment of director. This is to be found on pages 15 to 18 of your agenda pack. Again, I'll propose this. It is a requirement of the company, Fenland Future Limited, in its documentation in which was set up, that there be 3 directors of the company. At the moment, there are 2, and so it's necessary for us to have a 3rd director. Before I go on to talk about any particular names, may I just ask Anna Goodall if she'd be kind enough to leave the room. Thank you very much. Thank you. The proposal that we have, which was recommended to us by Fenland Future Limited, by the board of the FFL, is that Anna Goodall, who is currently the company secretary, be appointed as a director of the board, and that Jane Bailey be appointed as the company secretary of FFL, and that we delegate to the company secretary all the necessary arrangements to make this happen. And given the skill sets that both Anna Goodall and Jane Bailey have got, these appear to me to be eminently appropriate appointments for us to make. May I have a seconder, please? Councillor Mrs. French, thank you. I'll open this open to discussion. Any members? Oh, sorry, Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you. Being new to this and knowing Anna Goodall as I have done for 12 years, I think it's a most appropriate appointment.
Thank you very much. It is quite difficult in a way because we are dealing with officers who have spent their whole lives in local government, and they have to get their minds around the separation of that from a limited company, which has a very different set of rules. But I don't think we can do better in adding to the existing board than having Anna Goodall there. I really don't. Right, so if there are no further speakers, the recommendations are on page 15. I read them out just now. All those in agreement, please show. That's agreed unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. Would someone just let Anna back in, please? Thank you very much. And congratulations, Anna, you have been appointed. Right, agenda item 7 is the appointment to outside bodies for 2023-24. Report is to be found on pages 19 to 36 of your agenda pack. And that is for the current municipal year. Now, there is a list which was published on the website, and there have been some amendments to that. And I think it's appropriate for me to go through the list carefully. So that those, I'm not going to read out all of the appointments, thank you very much indeed, but I think that any amendments to what's already been published do need to be read out so that people can be aware of what they are. The Gavin Booth, as leader of the Fenland Independent Alliance, has nominated some individuals to some of the posts which the FIA are entitled to nominate to. That's not a big problem because the ones where he hasn't yet nominated, they can be dealt with between meetings of cabinet by the monitoring officer who has delegated power in our constitution to allow her to do that. So the fact that there will be a few which are missing is not the end of the world. So going through the list of outside bodies, we have the following changes. First of all, on the Fenland Twinning Association, the representative from the FIA will be Councillor Diane Cutler. I'm going fairly slowly on this to make sure that everyone catches this for the record. On the, Councillor Mrs. French.
Yes, thank you. With regarding the Fenland twinning, did I read somewhere that it's actually going to close down?
My understanding is that the committee got to the stage of considering that closure was the appropriate thing to do, but that actually has to be done. So assuming they still believe that's the right thing to do, they've actually got to be constituted so that they can unconstitute themselves. Right. Next item, the 100 of Wisbeach IGB. Councillor J. French should be substituted for Councillor S. Clark. From the FIA, Councillors Dal Roy and Gavin Booth are both appointed, and unaligned Councillor Roy Gerstner is appointed. If member services need me to stop and repeat anything, please do tell me. Right, on rural CAMS CAB, representative from the FIA will be Councillor Gavin Booth. On March East IDB, the appointments from the FIA are Councillor John Clark and Councillor Paul Hicks. On middle level commissioners, the FAA has made a proposed appointment, but I need to pass this over now to the monitoring officer to speak to us.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, on this appointment in particular to middle level commissioners, Councillor Gavin Booth, leader of FIA, has asked that a member external to the council is appointed to this body. Because this list only came in earlier today, what I'd like to do is just check the legal and constitutional position on whether we appoint people external to FDC, to outside bodies, and bring an update back to the group leaders, so we know what we need to do going forward. So I suggest and recommend we do not make that appointment today.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor French.
Thank you. Well, that's quite interesting. Going back to 2015, I think it's 24th of May 2014, it was brought up by Mr. and Mrs. Buckner that we should not be paying non-councillors. I believe the figure at that time was something like £2,500 we were paying to them, and we got no feedback. That was supposed to come back to full council. I have scrolled through very quickly. I haven't actually seen it. But it did go to Cabinet on the 18th of June 2015, where there was discussions, and it went no further either. So I think with the new makeup of councillors, and we've got more than enough councillors to attend these outside bodies without actually having to ask non-councillors to attend these. So I think we need to take a resolution back to full council next month.
Thank you, Councillor French. That's not a matter for today. And the recommendation that we have from the monitoring officer today is that we don't make this appointment subject to her further investigations. Councillor Mrs. Laws.
Thank you, Chair. My memory is coming back as well, Councillor French. For what you've actually said, and also a very strong argument by Councillor Mrs. Potts to remain on North Level after actually she had retired from council. And she gave substantial reasons because part of the farming community very interested to ensure that dikes and ditches were maintained properly on North Level. And she'd had a good working relationship, and it was declined completely. I'm sure Councillor Scanlon will actually support what I'm saying as well. I think obviously for consistency, and I'm sure it was looked into at the time by officers, and of the opinion that we had sufficient members to actually cover those appointments.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember similar because I remember it was actually not about drainage boards that it came up. It was over the Oasis Community Development Trust, and there was the previous councillor who lost his seat to Mrs. Buckner. He was still remained on the Oasis Trust, and she wasn't happy about that because I think she felt that she, as a newly appointed representative, should be on there. So that's what prompted it, and it was an ONS review about it. And if you look in the cabinet from the 18th of June 2015, it says that there was a number of recommendations from ONS which they adopted, but they were going to adopt the recommendation about no one from outside bodies that wasn't elected from the new council in 2015. I think it's 4.3 of that cabinet appendix, where they say that during that it will start from the new municipal year 2015. So that did go to cabinet to say that that was going to happen on 2015.
That's extremely helpful. Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Hoy. I'm sure the monitoring officer has taken note of that particular reference, and we'll leave this at the moment in the hands of the monitoring officer. And if it is taken to the next full council, then so be it. That's the appropriate place for it to be taken in terms of making policy. Moving on from that item, the next one is night layer IDB. Now, the FAA has ceded their 2 representatives on this IDB to the Conservative group, and in addition to the 8 names already on there, I'll therefore add Councillor Miscandlon's name and my own. Next one is North Level District IDB. Councillor Laws has given tremendous service to this internal drainage board, but even so, she doesn't deserve to be on twice. And accidentally, unfortunately, I was responsible for putting her on twice rather than just once. That was a mistake on my part. It wasn't deliberate. So one of those references to Councillor D. Laws should be replaced with Councillor Michael Humphrey, please. In addition, from the FAA, Councillor Gavin Booth is the representative on North Level IDB. And I believe that is the full list of all the amendments to the proposed appointments. As I say, there are a number of ones to be confirmed by the FAA. I think you all have a copy on your desk, and it's what's printed in red. That has been returned by Gavin Booth this morning, and the monitoring officer, as I say, will be able to fill any of those using her delegated powers, depending upon the conversations she has with Councillor Booth. Councillor Mrs. Laws.
Thank you, Chair. Noticing Whittlesea District, it's got TBC on there. We've got a meeting tomorrow. Well,
I'm afraid
just I'll throw that in the mix.
you're entirely correct, but we can only. I did have conversations with Councillor Booth. These are the nominations he's put forward, and he hasn't put one forward for Whittlesea District. So I'm afraid we'll only have 4 representatives there rather than 5.
And they will be Conservative, obviously.
Those 4 will be the FAA representative. Well, there won't be an FAA representative.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments, Councillor Ms. Hoy?
Yeah, so are we obligated to accept that the monitoring officer would put that under delegation, or do we have any power to not accept that? Because I think because given it is so unclear, and that it was clearly the intention of council, so even if it wasn't underlined, it was still the intention. We don't have to make the appointment even under delegation if we don't agree it today. It's not a fait accompli. Even if the advice is it's unclear, and so because of that we have to allow the appointment. We don't have to allow anything because it's cabinet that makes the appointment. So we could say that we want it to come back to next cabinet, for example.
Thank you very much indeed. I have the feeling that was directed as much towards the monitoring officer as it was towards me. The monitoring officer will make her decision based on all the evidence that she has in front of her. And we have to accept that it's in the Constitution that the monitoring officer does have the right to nominate 2 outside bodies between meetings of cabinet. That is just in the Constitution. That's not going to change. The only way in which you can change this is either by changing the Constitution itself or by having a resolution at full council to change it. I think that we would find that Cabinet by itself couldn't actually institute this rule, because there is a legal permission for councillors other than for representatives other than councillors to be used on outside bodies, but it would be for full council to decide if they wished not to utilise that. So I think we need to leave it in the hands of the monitoring officer, but ultimately this will be carried out in accordance with the wishes of council and in accordance with the constitution. Councillor Mrs. French.
Thank you. Yeah, you did say there's two ways of resolution or changing the constitution. I wouldn't like to go down the line of changing the constitution again. I'm sure it's already been tweaked. I remember several years ago, Paul and I, pain, suffering and everything else when we amended lots of stuff in there. So it's not an easy task. So I would much prefer a resolution.
Thank you. That will be in the hands of members, of course. Well, I now need to ask for a seconder, believe it or not, after all of that. Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Seaton. The item is now open for discussion. After all those questions, I think we might have discussed it already fully, just with all the questions. If anyone wishes to say anything else, they're welcome to do so. No. Okay, since there are no further speakers, then the recommendations are at page 15. They're not, they're on page 20, and requesting agreement to the proposed nominations to outside bodies as set out in Appendix A, and in addition, as I read out for the amendments, and for Cabinet to note the currently unfilled vacancies, and to note that authority is delegated to the corporate director and monitoring officer to make in-year appointments in consultation with group leaders as the need arises throughout the municipal year. Is this agreed? Those in favour, please show. Thank you, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. We can now move on to agenda item 8, which is 24 High Street, Wisbech update, which is on pages 37 to 38 of the agenda pack. And Councillor Seaton, may I invite you to present the update.
Thank you, Chairman. It's been nearly 40 years, I think, since this unsightly gap site at the 24 High Street in Wisbech, and it eventually is going to be filled with a building that fits into the historic High Street and completes the northern side of the street. Now, this is a significant project for Fenton District Council and marks the end of a long process that has taken many years to get to this stage. The Lottery Heritage Fund High Street project has been the impetus to move this project forwards, with additional support from the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority, not forgetting the considerable funding approved by this council. This further improvement to the High Street, on top of those shopfront improvements already accomplished in the past few years by the Heritage Fund project, as well as Wisbech Town Council's marketplace improvements, will set the centre of Wisbech up to remain a thriving market town for the future. The council is very pleased to be working alongside ETEC and other partners to bring this development forwards. This is a complex construction programme due to the site constraints and the proximity to the road. The site itself, with the significant groundworks required, means that the construction programme is 77 weeks long. And we don't expect to see the building rising above ground level until the winter of this year. Preparatory works for the construction are already underway, with the compound set up next to the Queen Mary Centre. The compound should be completed by the 16th of June, and then works should start on Monday the 19th of June. In addition to the progress of 24 High Street, the council continues to work with the Heritage Lottery Fund to develop a solution for the other gap site in Wisbech High Street, namely numbers 11 and 12. And I will bring an options paper to Cabinet shortly, allowing us to assess the best route forwards for this property. Cabinet's decision will then be discussed with the Heritage Lottery Fund to establish whether an extension to the project and funding are appropriate for the option selected. Chairman, today's report recommendation reads that Cabinet notes the current position in relation to the 24 High Street construction project in Wisbech High Street. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. May I have a seconder, please? Councillor Miss Scantlin, thank you very much indeed. The item is now open for discussion. Councillor Mrs. French.
Thank you. I want to think after all these years, I think this is very much welcome. The only question that I would have, I think we've said enough about this over the years. In the report, it does say the contractors will be using Wisbech Town Car Park. Is that Wisbech Town Council's or is it Fenland's car park?
No, it is Wisbech Town Council, and I think is actually leased from the county council, as I understand. So I think it takes up about 20 spaces, I think. So the actual Summers Road car park, which Fenley owns, is not being intruded on.
But it's
And
still the loss of 20 car parking spaces.
it is, yes, of the Wisbech town area, yeah.
Councillor Miss Hoy.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it is a shame that it's losing the car parking spaces, but then at the same time, we need the work doing. So it's kind of a swings and roundabouts. And also they're not all able to be used at the moment because there's been rough sleepers camping there for many months, which we are in the process of evicting at the moment. So that's kind of what's going on with that. And I think people are thinking perhaps once the compound goes in, they might move voluntarily, but we have to kind of wait and see, I suppose. But it's the legal action's already in place, so it's a matter of time.
Thank you. Any other member? I see no further speakers. The recommendation is at page 37 in the agenda pack and is to note the current position. Is this duly noted? Please indicate. All agreed. Thank you very much indeed. Agenda item 9 is draft 6-month cabinet forward plan, which is on pages 39 to 40 of the public agenda pack. I have a couple of additions to propose to this, both for cabinet on the 17th of June 2023. The first is that there be a paper on A14 contributions and Cambridgeshire Horizons Limited monies. And the second is an update on the medium-term financial strategy and any recommendations there may be to full council. Apart from those two changes, are there any other comments anyone would care to make? Councillor Mrs. French.
Thank you. I did mention it to you, Leader, but I think you must have forgotten. At some stage, we do want to discuss civil parking enforcement if we ever get anywhere.
This has been updated. I think you have the previous version of the yes. I'm afraid you have. This is item 5 on the current version of the paper. Any other comments? No. So the forward plan is noted for information. Agenda item 10, there aren't any urgent items for debate today, so we'll proceed straight to item 11 of the agenda. And item 11 of the agenda seeks approval of the minutes which were taken during the part of the last cabinet meeting, which was held in exempt session, and specifically in relation to item 17, which concerned the works agreed for Wisbech Suspended Quay. And these minutes can be found by members at pages 41 to 42 of the confidential amendment agenda pack. Now, I don't intend to go into public session because whilst the content of the minutes remain exempt from publication, we don't need to enter into exempt session to approve them unless any member present today wishes to propose detailed amendments which would necessitate it. Please may I therefore first ask any member who does not agree with the minutes to indicate that now. So I see no objections to the proposal to approve the minutes without having to go into exempt session. So they are approved as a correct record of the meeting, so they are now signed. Thank you very much. Yep. And this marks the end of the meeting. I declare the meeting closed, and the next meeting of Cabinet is scheduled to take place at 2 p.m. on the 17th of July. Thank you, members. Thank you, members of the public.